Hi there, yep, my name's Nick Dutch, and this is still part of the continuing series on the subject of science and the occult, in which I'm maintaining that one can actually analyze and operate within occultism in a similar manner to a scientist. But in order to do that, we've got to get a better understanding of what science actually is. So I've gone into a few things in the previous series of videos when I had a look at the scientific method, and I've kind of like discussed that in the YouTube video series so you can get a better understanding of what that's about. Now I'm going to go and talk about anti-positivism and essentially what that's about. I mean, my degree was in sociology, which I did with psychology. And that was prior to me doing my year of natural science and neuroscience, and also becoming a part qualified accountant and all that other kind of like fun stuff, which I rebelled against for a fair time. And of course, when I went self-employed and eventually came into becoming a professional tarot reader. But anyway, we'll discuss anti-positivism now. Then we'll probably do another series of videos on positivism so you can understand what that's about. And then we'll go into aspects of sociology and psychology and, again, relate that to the exploration of the supernatural. Okay, obviously a great way of finding things out is to look stuff up, and a great way of explaining stuff better is with reference to documents which are out there in the world. This is, again, Wikipedia, just under the category of anti-positivism, and I'll hopefully, if I remember, provide a link in the sidebar. Anti-positivism evolved in the 19th century when sociological positivism and sociological naturalism began to be questioned by scientists like William Dilby and Heinrich Rickert, who argued that the world of nature is not the same as the world of society, as human societies have unique aspects like meanings, symbols, rules, norms, and values that can be described as the culture. So the first thing that we can say is that scientists, and I think that's an important word, have actually rebelled against the natural science approach to the world that was present in positivism. Now, if I remember my sociology undergraduate studies well enough, the first, as it were, proper sociologist was a guy called Durkheim in France, and he wrote that social things should be considered to be like natural things. And as such, when he did his work on suicide, which I had the great and or dubious pleasure of reading when I was in my undergraduate years, he tried to explain the phenomena of suicide as if it were a natural phenomena, and went into it in quite great depth. So that's where sociology and the social sciences started off. And of course now we're seeing in the 19th century, scientists said, no, we can't do that with all phenomena, especially when we're dealing with human beings. This view was further developed by Max Weber, who introduced the term anti-positivism, which is what we're discussing today, also known as humanistic sociology. According to this view, closely related to anti-naturalism, sociological research must use specific tools and methods to concentrate on humans and their cultural values. This has led to some controversy on how one can draw the line between subjective and objective research. So, although the different methods within sciences relating to people is controversial, it's open to discussion and open to debate, it is still coming within the remit of science or a science. And that's also something important to remember, because when we're dealing with the occult, we might not be dealing with things which can be quantified and qualified in the same way as natural phenomena, but if we're doing it in a way which can be regarded as being scientific, then essentially we're still following aspects of the methodologies of science, so we are still performing science. Much less draw on an artificial line between environment and human organization. See environmental sociology and influence the study of hermeneutics. Okay. So in this particular case, there's a discussion of the surroundings of the individual affecting the individual. And again, within attempts to be supernatural, when you're trying to operate, whether it's doing an astral projection experiment or whatever, you do have to think about how your environment has affected you, has affected your mood and state of being, etc. But essentially, if you're being sufficiently analytical about what you're doing, you're still doing science. The base concepts of antipositivism have expanded beyond the scope of social science. In fact, phenomenology has the same basic principles at its core. Lately, Chilean biologists, let's hope I can pronounce this right, Humberto Maturana and Francisco Varela applied these notions to the world of biology, developing a type of relativist science. Now, that phrase there, relativist science, is also quite important because it shows and demonstrates that the boundaries of what is scientific methodology is not necessarily as clear-cut as we saw in the previous essay that we had a look at that was dedicated to the methodologies of natural science. So we can think a little outside of the rather narrow point of view of the natural sciences when we're investigating other phenomena, shall we say. And that's essentially been the main meaning of that excerpt that we've just gone through there. And there's no reason why we should not apply that to any other real phenomenon. Now, the essay goes on and gives a critique of positivism, which is the standard natural science methodology. Antipositivism criticizes many of the positivistic assumptions and principles. Firstly, they argue that there is no methodological unity of science, i.e. that we cannot use the same tools to study natural and social sciences. So, if we were to expand that particular phrase, we cannot use the same tools, or maybe not quite the same tools, if we were to try and analyze supernatural phenomenon, or apparently supernatural phenomenon, as well you know by now. I use the word supernatural just to mean that subset of things which our society calls supernatural. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that these things are outside of the natural world. Okay, I'm going to stop the video now and I'll start it again. We'll have a look at the rest of this particular excerpt. Okay, just a minute.